Good morning, everybody. We have a special guest today, Chaz from Dadicated. Let me get him on here. Hope everyone's having an excellent day. Let's see. Where we get going, huh? What's up, Steve? What's up, Jake? Chaz, what's up? What's going on over
Hey,
there?
what's up? What's up, Jack? How you doing, man?
Good. Oh, I thought you were holding an umbrella. I'm like, dude, are you in a rainstorm or what?
No, I'm just very posh. I'm very, I carry umbrella anywhere I go. No,
Ah,
at my, I'm at my sister's house. They got a pool over here, so they got one of those big umbrella things.
yeah.
Yeah. How you doing?
Man, I'm doing great. I'm on another Air Force base. I like to hang out with the Air Force, the airmen.
Makes
They're,
sense.
they're my favorite. I go to the gym at 6 in the morning, and there's two people at this gym on Dobbins Air Force Base. Like, I joined the wrong branch. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, that sounds about right. That sounds about right. We get to the gym around 9:10.
Yeah,
Start work around noon.
done with work at 2,
Yeah, and we
and
go
take a
home.
and take a lunch in between.
About 2 hour lunch on average.
Anyways, I remember you told me you got rank E7 now. Congrats, bro.
Thank you. Yes,
What
sir.
is that?
Yeah.
A master
Found
sergeant? Is that what that is?
that that is a master
Dude,
sergeant. Yes, sir.
that's
Thank you.
awesome. That's huge.
Yeah. It
How,
was
how, how's it feel to wear a little bit more rank?
well, I haven't put it on yet. I still got to go through the cycle, but
Ah,
finding out that I made it, it was cool for about, I don't know, about it was weird because for about 30 seconds I was like, "Oh my gosh, I made it." And then suddenly this flood of anxiety just rushed, like, "Oh crap, what kind of leader am I going to be? What am I going to do? How am I going to be for my people?"
yeah.
That kind of thing. So it was, like I said, it was cool for about 30 seconds. And then suddenly I was just like, oh God.
Isn't it funny? Like each rank that you get, I was the same way throughout my entire military career. It's like every time I got rank, I had to like process it in my head of like, what kind of leader do I see myself being? And at the end, I always didn't change. Like I'm like, wait, the guy who got here earned that rank, so let me just stick to
Right.
this guy and just make him better. And so that's
Yeah.
how I did a lot. But I'll tell you what, the last time I went from lieutenant to captain, 02 to 03, that was a big shift. Just it reminded me of going from E4 to E5 that first time, and it was
Yeah.
just like it gave me a different perspective of like, oh wait, this rank's gonna be respected a lot more. Like when you go from E4 to
Right.
E5, that's a huge jump. Same as
Yeah.
that 02 to 03 for us in the Army, and yeah, I had to recheck myself and remotivate. I think it's like motivating, right? It's
Yeah. I think it's a jump on a lot of different levels, professionally and personally, because as an E4, um, the people that you're leading now were your peers just yesterday,
yeah,
and figuring out how to make that transition can be tough. It was tough for me. It was tough because just kind of now I'm their boss when before I wasn't, and there was a different kind of relationship that you had to have. So that adjustment period was a little. It was tough. It was tough, is what I would say. But and then at the same time, you also figure out that when coming back to leadership, you kind of figure out that you have to embody and embrace and employ various different leadership styles based on the person and the people that you're leading, right? And just the same as fatherhood, I don't parent my two kids the same way,
yeah.
right? There is a standard, right, that I do levy upon my children, but then as far as from the leadership standpoint, being the father, being the dad, I do have to take one approach with one kid and a totally different one with another.
No, I get that because it's kind of just like when you have all the soldiers underneath you, or airmen, or if you're in a Navy, seaman, whatever. I don't
Yeah.
know, Coast Guard, I think, or seamen too. I'm not sure, but
Enjoy
same
that.
thing. Same thing. It's just like each soldier, you take a different approach, right? For
Mm-hmm.
me, it was like first that's what the reason you have to get intimate and understand who they are, know who they are, and that way you know what kind of a leadership approach you could take going forward. And that same thing with my son, I was going to mention is like with fatherhood. So for our house, we have like a set standard of like morals and values within our house. Like my wife and I sat down, we talked about like wrote out what our morals and values are, what we believe them to be in our house, right?
Mm.
And so like you just said, that's like the baseline. All right, our baseline is this, right?
Yep.
Whatever it is, if it's empowerment, integrity, positivity, whatever it is, you make your own.
Sure.
So that's the bottom line. And I can only imagine, because we plan on having another kid here shortly, and I can only imagine if it's a girl, I have to have a totally different approach than my son.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
you only got the one boy?
We only have one boy, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we got two boys, and I think we're done. But coming back, if we were to have a girl, I'd be like, I wonder what kind of dad I would be. It'd be like you said, totally different.
Yeah.
A totally different approach. It'd have to be.
I feel like if I had a girl, I'd just be I'm already a softie, let's be honest. But if I had a girl, I would probably just melt. And my wife wants to see that. She knows how to melt. Yeah.
It'd be pure cake.
So let's jump into the fatherhood talk.
Sure.
Since we're both dad pages over here.
Yeah. Yes. And congrats on your book, man, too.
Thank you, brother. Yeah, everyone. I just had book drop last week. Fatherhood: The Art of Love and Leadership. I've been getting a lot of love there, and I appreciate anyone who's just helped along the way. And yeah,
that's a great title, by the way.
Right? It's very military.
Yeah.
I was on a podcast on Saturday, and they're like, "Is there any ties to like your book and military?" I'm like,
I was gonna ask that today.
I told him on the podcast, I'm like, you will find every tie of military in my book. Almost the chapters themselves, from a chapter being called Disciplined Dad to building relationships. Like, we talk about that stuff in the military, right? It's like, we have to build relationships everywhere we go, being disciplined. The Army has manuals that's called Leadership, the art and science of leadership. That's what it's called. And that's kind of my play on fatherhood, is fatherhood, the art of love and leadership. And plus, I think those are just two vital parts of fatherhood, is love and leadership. It's like you have to have the emotional side along with the consistency and physical side that you're showing. Yeah. So there's definitely a lot of ties there that I brought in, and I think it's just the person I am too. Before I even joined the military, I was this kind of man. The military just brought out like a lot more rigid discipline. I don't want to say even rigid. It's just
structure, maybe.
Yeah, we'll say structure. Yeah, that's a better word.
Yes, it's a less rigid word.
It is. It really is. My wife will say I'm rigid sometimes, and I'm trying to break those ways.
Yep. Yeah. Same here. And I think that having a book like that, or a resource to come back to, and again, military, right? We always have these resources. You said the science, the art and science of leadership for the Army is what you said. We have the Air Force and the enlisted force structure. The Brown Book is what we call it. And basically, it's that standard. It's that bottom line. Like, here's what you need to be as this. And a lot of times you'll hear non-commissioned officers come and say it like if you don't know what to do, fall back on that book. And and it's funny, your book it really kind of sets that possibility of standards, right? Is from what I read, like for whichever standards you want to set, it lays those out for you for like ideas and especially like ways to communicate. I read that chapter. That was great. I loved reading that chapter, because what it reminded me of was how difficult it was at the beginning. Well, still, it's ever difficult, the communication piece. But when I started to hone in on that and really made an active attempt to communicate with my kids and understand, one thing that really kind of started to take a dial back was the tantrums, from because I've got toddlers, right? So and I realized that, at least for my kids, a lot of the tantrums stemmed from not being understood and not being heard. So took a step back and tried to understand that communication instead of trying to dominate that space. And things got so much better when it came to those tantrums. So and the way that you write that out and lay that out in that chapter specifically, I was reading it, I'm just like, yep. Yep, that too.
I tell them, especially like my military father friends, I'm just like, dude, you're gonna read it, you're gonna feel like it's a military guide, and these are things I'm still working on. I'm not like a master of being a father or anything, you know what I mean? And I wrote it more for myself to fall back to this book and be like, hey, what did I write? It's just like my wife, when I talk to my son, it's right on communication. I talk about effective communication, verbal and nonverbal. And it's like, I haven't mastered the nonverbal. I watch my son I'm staring at him, or sometimes I'll get caught on my phone. I'm trying to do a little bit of work because I work from this device. And it's like, I have to explain to him properly, hey, buddy, I'm working right now. This device is for work for dad.
Right.
And I don't want him to feel like I'm just slacking. And I'm just playing on my phone, scrolling, which happens too. Of course, I'm human. And yeah, it's like, put the phone down, look at him. And I try to do best, of course, right? And I think that's what we need to do as fathers. And that makes it the conscious parenting part, right? Yeah. I think a C-17 is about to take off. So if it gets loud, you know what's up. Dude, I don't know what's up. This reserve base has more planes going every day than MacDill Air Force Base did.
Oh, I believe that.
I don't know why. The reserve is.
But yeah, I have the same problem with I don't want to say problem, but the same thing with my phone and stuff like that, and having to, like, you know, I do the same thing. Like I'm working, I'm doing something, and then my son, dad, and then I'm like, what, you know, and then I'm like, let me set it aside and let me give them that time. At the same time, also teaching them that, you know, hey, when daddy has this, you know, going on, I am actually working. So you do have, you know, just wait until I'm done so that then we can talk about what you want to talk about. Unless it's an emergency. If it's an emergency, let me know, you know.
Yeah, you know, the toddlers will be like, dad, over speak. And it's like,
yeah,
you have to teach them, hey, when I'm having an adult conversation, you just need to be patient and learn patience and, you know, wait for dad to be done with his conversation with the other adult. And then I will definitely give you all my attention. But if you interrupt me, then I can't give you all my attention, and I've lost attention here too. So I'm failing both people. And it's so tough to teach toddlers that. And we do our best.
They don't care.
Communicating that to him.
Yeah.
However, he's a toddler. He's on his own path, his own journey. So often it's still the same thing. It's just where he wants to interrupt adults talking. And you know, you see big kids doing that too. You see up to 10 years old kids doing that. So it's like, in my house, it's just like, hey, if we stay consistent with this, by 5, he won't even be doing that anymore. We'll knock that out of his system in the next 2 years, and he'll just be, he'll be able to calm down, balance himself, be patient, and wait for his opportunity to speak, which is difficult for adults. It's also, I mean.
It's true. You're not kidding. I mean, one thing that I noticed, and I do it myself, is we don't listen to understand, we listen to respond. You know, and so we're just sitting there just waiting for our chance to put in our little 10 cents and 2 cents. And then, you know, without even understanding the conversation. That's something that actually I teach my students in the recruiting schoolhouse is and what's kind of funny too. And I know I just went on a little tangent here. I'm sorry, but the things that I learn at the schoolhouse and as a recruiter are helping me with the communication piece with my kids. And because what we do as recruiters, we try to ask questions to understand what somebody's going through and see how we can help with our product, right? And what kind of made me a little bit embarrassed myself was the fact that I had those skills, but I wasn't using them I was only using them in this space. I wasn't using them in fatherhood space.
Yeah.
And then that's when I was talking about, like you were saying, in communication in your book, employing those started to make it just so much easier. And then I was mad at myself. I was like, I have these skills. Why was I not using them over here? So
I think,
but we got to be. Go ahead.
I think you're spot on with that. Is that in the military we get this chance to do all these cool schools and classes. I remember they sent me for a week to emotional intelligence school. And it's like, how many other jobs are actually sending people to emotional intelligence school? And I mean, obviously I talk about that in the book, Emotional Intelligence, but I learned so much. I mean, you know how it is. It's like they just open up the water faucet and just drill you in the face. So it's hard to take it all in. So that Army or military always gives pamphlets and all this stuff. And I still have those pamphlets from that school because I thought that was so cool that they sent me to emotional intelligence. Like, exactly what leaders need. Leaders need to have that ability to know when to be disciplined or when to have empathy and compassion, right? And it's based on or nuances of each individual.
And we teach emotional intelligence too, and it's so valuable, especially now in this day and age, you know, and understanding that emotional intelligence, and then again, definitely as a father, knowing when to push, when to not push, you know, when to go discipline, when to go anything. Like you were saying, you said it really well. I'm not going to just repeat it. Definitely, yeah. From military standpoint, the skills that we do get are so valuable, not only just in that military space, but all throughout, you know, the different scopes that we all have to employ.
Yeah. And do you see yourself bringing a lot of your military to your sons?
I do. I do. And some of the things that I try to, well, some of them I actually try to, like the discipline, the structure,
Yeah.
you know, some of them I do without knowing it, which is more so of the hard-nosed sometimes, you know, which is actually something I'm trying to dial back. Cause like I was saying before, there's different styles for different people. And I have one son that the hard-nosed actually does work for. My other son does not work for it, does not respond well to it. So I'm like, ooh, okay. I don't know which, well, I mean, when to employ that approach has been more difficult, but I'm, you know, as we go through it and learn and that's the main thing too, is always have a self-monitoring, right? Go back and think about how you did. Did I do that right? Or did that have the effect that I wanted? And if not, don't do it again. You know, and if it did, log that in the memory bank.
Dude, you bring up a great point. I'm just trying to get out of the sun. I'm getting direct hit. And the point that, or what I want to bring up is that the self-reflection part, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how many times do you go back as a parent and you're like, man, did I handle that properly? Did I actually, was I disciplined? Was I consistent with what I always tell my son I'm going to be? And like, hold yourself accountable, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there's many fathers out there that are not doing that. They're not stepping up to the self-reflection part. They're just going with it. It's like a one, what's that called? I forgot the saying, where it's like you hit and just keep going, right? You just keep on pushing through and not stop to think about anything. And so I think that's a big part that you mentioned, is that after some kind of altercation with my son, I always sit back. I always reflect, like, hey, did I handle that?
Yeah.
And sometimes I high five myself. I'm like, yes, I did exactly what I preach. Because, you know, like, we could preach it all day long, but are we actually doing it? And then there's sometimes where my wife will be like, hey, did you notice that you did this, this, and this? I have a great wife that, like, really, really holds me accountable. We're great at holding each other accountable. So it's like, when you're a team, when you create that team in the family to parent, and you have an accountability partner, it is so amazing, because it's just like, when I do fail, which I do all the time, if it's through communication, if it's through me rushing through things, like you were saying earlier, it's like, slow down and, you know, take your time. And she helps me do that reflection, and it's so vital to me becoming better. If I don't reflect, I can't get better. And so I love having that in my wife, that partner that holds me accountable, even though, and I'll say it for all of us fathers, sometimes it pisses us off when our wife, right after like something happened, and your wife tells you. But I do love it overall.
Yeah. 100%. And you know, it's not everybody's as fortunate as us, because I have a very, very similar relationship with my wife. She will tell me, hey, you probably should have handled that a different way. And then she'll tell me, hey, good job, you know. And I personally, I need that. I need that. I'm a guy that kind of needs validation. I don't beat around the bush with it. It is who I am. And so when my wife says, hey, good job, I'm like, okay, good, thanks. You know, they got but
I think all of us need validation, right? Some sort, we all need validation.
Yeah.
And no better than when you're being a parent and you do something great and you have your spouse or partner come up to you and they're just like, that just, I like when my wife was sometimes like, that just turned me on the way you just fathered. I'm like, yeah, I knocked it out of the park.
Yeah, that I've actually had that too, and I'm like, really? All right.
Yeah, it's motivating, you know. It makes you stop and think, because in the beginning when my son was born, I knew nothing, and she has 2 degrees in childhood development. So like I'm watching her, I'm like, man, I wish I could step up and help her more than I am. And of course she's breastfeeding, so of course she gets him more, anyways. But as time went on, I had to keep learning. It was just like I would start off by like talking to him standing up, and this little tiny kid, right? And this, I know it's in my book that eventually I learned the trade of like taking a knee and talking eye to eye instead of talking down. You know, this is a better approach with kids, and they'll listen a little bit better when you're face to face with them, talking to them at their level. And it's been nothing but great. I still do it to this day. My son expects me to get on a knee and talk to him. He's looking at that. You know, the rest of
I can't come to your level. You got to come to me. Yeah. And then I love that you talk about accountability. I actually use that word so much with my family. There's 2 things that you touched on that I was like, bam, bam. That accountability piece. And I tell them like, hey, son, you know, it's my job to hold you accountable as your dad. And I need to tell you right now that what you did was not the right thing. One thing I always try to do is I always try to tell them they're not being bad, right? I don't want to say you're being bad. But what you did was not right. It was the wrong thing, right? And I always say you're not being bad. You're learning. That's what we're doing. We're learning right now, you know. And then so that accountability piece, I definitely try to, again, and like you perfectly said it, hold them accountable at the same time, hold ourselves accountable through that self-reflection. And if you and I think I had said in one of my videos was, if you keep doing the wrong thing over and over, that's the definition of insanity. So don't keep doing that. And then you talked about being a team, and the video I made with The Rock and Stone Cold, and it's the one that got the big hits. That to me is, when I saw that, I was like, oh, that's the unified front that I want to portray as a parenting team, right? And I'm so happy that there's so many people in the comments that picked up on that. There's, you know, comments are comments, but there, so having that united front and that support system for each other, holding each other accountable, really establishes, and you put it in your book, you read it everywhere. Having that, it really establishes that good structure of a family life, and it's so important.
I'm gonna hit 2 things there. Yeah, I 100% agree right there. And not only does that put family in balance, it also makes like your relationship, your solo relationship with kids stronger, and your relationship with your partner.
Oh yeah,
there's a lot more harmony within your family, and so I think that accountability definitely, it's like, as a family you should be holding each other accountable, all of us. And it's just, as my son gets older and I do something wrong, I'll expect him to be like, Dad, you usually do this, why'd you do that, and be my accountability partner too. And then another thing I want to touch on was when you're talking about discipline. So I talk about discipline in 2 ways in the book. I talk about individual discipline, like myself. Like I can't help my wife or my son until I mentally, you know, like body, mind, and soul, everything. And then there's the discipline part of disciplining your kid. And so I cover both, and I use the word discipline both times. And here's why. We don't say bad. You're a bad boy. We'd never use that kind of language. We don't say good boy either. It's kind of like, you have a dog. That's what I say to my dog. So why would I use my son? And don't get me wrong, it's hard, because when you first have a kid and you only had a dog for years, you use dog language to your kid. I had to break that cycle. Now it's kind of like, hey, buddy, because you weren't disciplined, the consequence is this. And what it is, then I have to stay consistent with whatever that consequence is. So I'll get down on a knee and be like, hey, man, I understand that looked cool and you did that, but because you weren't disciplined and holding yourself accountable, now your consequence is no TV for the rest of the day or whatever it is. I'm just throwing that out there.
Sure.
Yeah. So I look at like that.
Yeah.
Good, bad.
I missed that part. I missed the last part that you'd said. I'm sorry.
So I use that framework instead of using the words good, bad, or punishment. We don't ever say you're gonna get punished. No, that's just the word we use. Like punish. That seems very. It's just a harsh word to me. Like to be like, come here, time to get your punishment. Go outside and switch off the tree.
And I if I were to say there was any weak point that I have in my fatherhood, it would be the discipline piece and figuring out how to navigate that. Because you say, don't use the word punishment. I try not to, but sometimes when the frustration is at a high, it's tough to not say you're being punished or that's bad. I try not to, but my whole platform for what I'm doing is transparency and honesty, and more so, like, I want to put out there that if you're having trouble, you're not alone. And we always have room to learn. We always have room to self-reflect. And so when I hear about discipline and what you're saying and reading in your book, I mean, I want to employ that too. And I always trying to do better and use good language that's more reinforcing as opposed to punishing, right? So I love what you're saying, and me personally, straight up, I got to be better at that myself. I really do, So thank you for writing your book.
It's our innate ability as men to be like, when we get frustrated and flustered, it's easy to just drive straight through, right? And stop. Don't put on the brakes. And afterwards, we'll reevaluate everything and be like, "Oh, did I have?" Right. And so I learned that the big thing, and I learned this as a single man, is meditation and mindfulness, right? So the most important part as a father is, so when we get high strung and we're having some tough times, our kids just aren't listening. The most important part to me is like, hey, I need to take a step back. And I need to check myself first. And that's where you have to be your own accountability partner, right? It's like, take a step back, Jack. Take one deep breath, because there's a meditation that's just one breath. And it's one focused breath. You focus on your breath, and it really calms you down a lot. So I do that. I take a step back, take my deep breath, and then I re-engage the situation. And then one tool that I would say, Chaz, is that, like, maybe reword it into a sentence or into a question. Do you think that was a good idea? You know what I mean? Now you don't use any of those other words that are kind of more negative. Instead, it'll be like, hey, buddy, do you really think that was the best idea? Was that? And that gives me a chance also to put action now behind whatever I'm saying. Because I really do need. I'm the same as you. I definitely get big emotions, right? And if I don't regulate my my nervous system, then I can be a total dick to my son. Does he deserve, right? It's like, do our kids deserve for us to be a dick? Because then I'm showing them that that's okay. And I always try to keep that in my mind, is like, is this the guy I want my son to be when I'm at my worst, when I'm not balanced? And so it's a very, very balanced line that you have to walk, right? It's like, don't go too far this way, and then you also don't want to go this way. So it's dude, we all struggle with that. So you're not alone on that, brother.
So, and thank you. So, what do you think about, like, when let's say you cross your line, I cross my line with discipline. What conversation do you have with your son if and when that happens? Is it, do you let him know, like, hey, I was wrong there, I messed up? I try to do that to myself. Like, hey, daddy didn't handle that how I wanted to handle it, and I was wondering what you thought about that.
I think honesty and transparency with your kids is absolutely one of the most important things you can have, because they need to see that you're just human and you're also learning with them. So I kind of just give that validation. It's like, hey, man, I'm sorry. Dad messed up right there. I did not mean to hurt your feelings. I didn't mean to do this or that. And I'll just tell him, hey, I'm learning with you. So we're in this together, all right? We're still a team, right? Teamwork makes the what? And he'll say dream work.
Boom.
He's been saying that his whole life. So it's like, I want to bring him back and tell him, hey, we're a team. dad really fucked up, man. And I let my emotions get the best of me. I was not a good man right there, right? That's why I push so hard for you to have these skills to navigate the world more centered and balanced than dad at the moment. But dad's going to keep working, and I'm going to try to get better, and we're going to get better together. And I'll say, I'm sorry, man. Do you forgive me? And my son almost every time, I understand, Dad. I forgive you. And it's like, and, you know, like tells you, it's almost like every time you hear that, I can literally tear up, right? It's just like very emotional for me when I go through that, because I'm so upset with myself. And then you have this little human that's just like understanding, and they really understand. You know, kids understand way more than we give them credit for. And it's like when he says like he forgives me or he understands, it does. It makes me like cry, and inside I'm crying. I'm just like, I gotta be strong. I'm a little man, and so that's how I handle it, man. How about you?
It's crazy. It's a very similar way. Very similar way. After I don't handle situations the way that I should have or wanted to, because the frustration had pushed me past that line. You know, I would always try to come back and let him, the same thing. Like every day is new as a father. Every single day. And every day is going to bring a new challenge that we don't know how to handle. Okay. So the mistakes are valuable in fatherhood. They're valuable as long as you're able to, like we talked about, self-reflect. If you're making mistakes and not self-reflecting, that's just going to keep spiraling downward. But if you make the mistakes and use them to your advantage, use them to be a better parent, a better husband, better anything really.
Right.
You know, and then the transparency and the honesty piece, that's where you really just make those mistakes as valuable as they possibly can be, and being honest with your kids, and then what that does too is it gives your kids the tools to hold you accountable as a father, because they can be like, hey, Dad, remember that time? Now it looks like we're heading back that way, you know. And I'll be like, oh, all right. Let me take I do the one breath. Let's take, and sometimes I'll walk away for a little bit. I'll be like, I need to separate myself from this situation because I am getting frustrated. And then my son will be like, I'm frustrated too, you know. And I'll be like, yeah. So we'll separate, and we'll come back, and we'll find a good platform to talk about what just happened, you know. And then we're always better from it. We're always better for it too.
No, I think you're right there. Is that one thing you mentioned that my wife taught my son early on. At like 18 months, he was already saying, Dad, I need space, right? So and I think it's a great tool that my wife gave him right away. And if he's upset or anything, he'll just say, Dad, I need space. This kid's 3 years old. Like at 2, when he was saying that, I was just like, you're 2 years old. How do you know if you need space? In my head.
Right. I'll give you space when you need space.
Sometimes I feel like that inside, but outside, I definitely always am like, all right, buddy, go get your space. If Dad's bothering you, I'll leave you alone. And because I know I can also annoy my son just like he annoys me. Maybe it's a little intentional sometimes.
And we got to check our manly egos too. When it comes to that, you know, we're the men. We are the man of the house, you know. But sometimes we got to kind of, again, just check ourselves and take a step back and give that space where they're honest, they're requesting it, you know. They're being honest, putting it out there. They feel comfortable enough to put it out there, which is a good thing, right? And I think that's it's just so valuable.
Yeah, I want to touch on something you said there, is that we need to check our masculine, right? I was about this with my buddy Matt, or Alex might be on here actually, and how us as fathers, as men, we need to be more balanced and understand that we need to be balanced with masculine and feminine energy. And that's kind of like how my book is, right? It's like love and leadership. Leadership's that masculine side, the love part's that feminine side. But when you say that to men, they're like, I don't want anything feminine, especially nowadays, right? With all the political crap. It's just like
a whole different conversation these days.
You have a million talks on that, but we'll stick to the topic at hand. Yes. So, it's like when you tell men that, is like, you need to balance your feminine and your masculine. They're like, oh yeah, oh, I want masculine. No, no, because if you have that feminine to balance you, that's your emotional side. That's that side that we're learning mindfulness and meditation,
Mm-hmm.
taking a deep breath when you're flustered and you're regulating your nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
It's all those tools come from that feminine energy. I grew up with only sisters and a mom, so I kind of had that higher feminine energy anyways. And the masculine side came. It was coming. I was a big sports guy. I was a captain of the sports team. I was a bricklayer. I was infantry. It's like everything I
Oh,
did was
oh,
masculine
yeah.
at that point.
Yeah.
So it's like I got a well balanced feminine masculine energy. Now the problem that happened for me is that growing up I didn't have like a verbal intelligence, or I forgot what my wife calls it. It's like being able to speak your emotions properly.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
it's a term, I forgot the term, but I didn't have that. So I never could speak my emotions. So what did I do? I would either blast out everything out of my mouth at once and hurt people,
Mm-hmm.
or I would keep it all inside and run away.
Right.
But,
Either way,
huh?
damaging. Either way, it's damaging.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you have the tools of that feminine energy, then you're good. And the masculine energy is always going to stay. I feel as like most men, at least.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think a lot of it has to do with, and I'm not blaming previous generations at all, because they, you know, our parents had their way, and that's how they were brought up, and we were brought up a way that they felt that was right. Hopefully, hopefully that's the case. And but each generation has the opportunity to learn something new about this product. It's almost like how, the you look at the athleticism of NBA players back in the day compared to now. They just have more tools now, and and that's what we have. We have more tools now to be able to be the best parent possible. But I think that they did the best they could. But we can't blame previous generations. I can say that, like, I was brought up that way, but I'm not going to blame that. What do you think about that?
All right. So we're going to get deep again here.
Oh, sorry.
So what I think is you have to know your history
Mm-hmm.
to know where you want to go, right? And that's kind of like in every military, we're taught that too. But I'm a history major, so it's like really you have to know your history. Like what's happening right now has already happened before. Like all this woke stuff that's happening that happened in the Weimar Republic in Germany. And so it's
Mm-hmm.
like it happened. So if you knew that, you know that happened, what was the outcome of it, right? So you could get ready for it. Now with parenting, we need to know our ancestor. I think it's important because I do believe that there's some like ancestral trauma that is caused, or generational trauma, however you want to word it, that can be inflicted on us, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's due to the way our parents were raised, then how we were raised, and so like there is a line that we're somehow all connected, right? So I think it's super important to know your ancestral path, and not only know it, but be better than it. So it's like then
Yeah.
you hold yourself accountable. Again, this accountability thing is always popping up,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's like then you have to hold yourself accountable to be like, hey, my ancestors worked their ass off. Like for me, my family, I'm Lebanese. My family came from Lebanon in the early 20th century, and it's like they had nothing. Then my grandfather came. He was a bricklayer, and he started his own company and just kicked ass. And we were a pretty big masonry family and company. And so it's just like, all right, so he broke some generational patterns, but how did he parent then? So like, all right, now let me top off on that. So he did great on the economics part. Now, how about his parenting? Okay, I could adjust fire and be better in this spot, right? And so I think you have to look at your past and see where they made mistakes, really use
Mm-hmm.
critical thinking, which I know is very tough these days to use,
Mm-hmm.
and be critical. And I know it's hard because I speak out a lot about my family and stuff, and my family fights back and they're like, you're a piece of shit, blah, blah, blah. But I'm not trying to hurt them. I'm just speaking
Mm-hmm.
what I'm seeing.
Right.
And is that we could have changed a lot. So in the past, it's like, if you're looking at the past, you can say, hey, what kind of diet did they have that led them to dying at 50 years old or 60 years old or 70 years old, right? I don't want to live to only 70. I'll tell you that much. I want to live to 100.
Right.
104 is the goal. So it's like, what did they do? So now you're taking the genetic part and you're turning it into epigenetics. So epigenetics is the environment around you and how that breaks up the path or patterns of the past. And so if you're looking at the epigenetic side, it's like, all right, here's where I can improve my ancestral path. They had horrible diets. Well, first they probably had a way cleaner diet, and then it finally moved up to just the last generations where they ruined our food. And it's like, all right,
Yeah.
so the last two generations have been eating crap and dying young. I need to stop eating crap. I need to watch what I'm eating and actually like remove the refined sugars and all this crap that's in there, right? There's just so much stuff in our foods and dyes and all these things.
Mm.
So I need to do that. So then when my son is coming up, that's not something he needs to fix. He's already going to have that tool, right?
Yeah.
So he has that tool knowledge of saying, hey, I need to eat like this. And once in a while, if I'm out and I eat something from a restaurant and it's loaded with canola oil, he's fine. His body, he'll know how to process it, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to go through everything, though. It's like, what was inside of the house? Were they watching TV and that stuff? Were they staying inside and not connected to nature as much? So it's like there's an ancestral connection that should move you forward to be better than the past. And in doing so, our next generation is even going to be better than us because they're going to have those tools right from the beginning. Because it's like, I read something the other day where it's like a young person who doesn't listen to an old person who's 80 years old is just losing out on knowledge, right? It's not respect my elders like that. I think that's ridiculous because if they're a rude asshole, they're a rude asshole at any age. And so it's like, but what they do have is 40 more years of experience on this earth, so they have some kind of knowledge I don't. Now it's this, you turn around that if an old person doesn't listen to a young person, they're missing out on knowledge because they think they know everything and the young person nothing. No, because the young person has all the new technology, all the new ideas and all this stuff. So if they listen, they walk away with knowledge. So both the old person and young person can walk away with knowledge. So that's kind of like I feel with the ancestral path and changing. That's for the next generation.
Super. I like that. That's definitely cool. You know, definitely growing up, you know, respect your elders, but then you say, well, if they're an asshole, then that don't matter.
I mean,
but we all learn from each other.
We've all been there. Some old people that are just total assholes, and it's like, why? It makes.
Yeah, I definitely got. I think I got lucky in that respect. Is being able to pinpoint the assholes. I think my parents helped me out with that one a lot. Oh man. But you kind of brought up, and I don't mean to drive it because this is you, but you brought up the ancestral, and then the home life, and then in your book you talk about work life and home life balance, and that's something that as a recruiter we have to be so mindful of, and it's insane because recruiters can really be consumed by the work itself. So yeah, I was happy to see that in your book and reading about it. It was I had to go through it myself, you know, hardcore. I'm sure everybody does, you know, but I definitely had to go through that balancing of work and home life because it was taking effect on both.
Yeah, dude, it's hard in the military too. I think it's especially hard in the military, I'll say.
Yeah,
and that's because we're supposed to be there 24/7, right? It's like, oh, you're always able to work. You don't make your time. So, and then as you move up into senior levels, it's like each rank holds more time. And it's like all they want to do is take away time. And I didn't mess with it, to be honest, until I became officer. As a sergeant, I kind of knew it, but I was in Germany, so it didn't matter. I was already like away from everybody. I was in Germany, and all my enlisted time was all in Germany.
Yeah.
And so
nice.
When I was like, I can't just drive myself nuts. But the big thing was I lived in Hawaii. So I knew I wanted to get off work to go surfing, go to the beach, and enjoy Hawaii. So it's definitely selfish reasons why I started to do that. And then I was a PL, a platoon leader, for 3 years. They would not let me move up or do anything because I was a medical operations officer that came from the infantry. And the infantry loved me. So they're just like, no, you're staying here. So by the time I was on year 3, I'm like, dude, I'm not going to just sit here till 7 like I was a second lieutenant or 01. I'm going to knock out the work, and I'm going to go home at a good time. If that's 16:30 to 17:30, somewhere in that hour, I'm out. I'm done. I'm putting down. And I never, ever took my computer home my whole career until COVID, I should say. COVID, I had, but I made sure, and people got mad at that, but it was definitely something I made the standard and I set it, and I tried to knock out all my work before I left that I thought was priority. My priority, right? They give you a list of priorities and prioritize again. So yeah.
Absolutely. And communicating those priorities to, and it is kind of funny, and I was going to talk about this too, is when you communicate your priorities and what you're feeling, and I know that this might not be the case for everybody, okay? But I was actually surprised by the response that I got, and I might have just had really good leadership. But when I told them, I was like, "Hey, I think I'm working too much. I think I'm taking too much time away from my family." And when I became a recruiter, that's when, at the same time, that's when we started our family. So balancing this new job that I'm doing along with this other new job that I'm doing, that was very heavy. And it wasn't until I figured out myself how I needed to balance between work life and home life was when both avenues and both platforms started performing way better, right? Given too much to work was, it didn't improve my performance one way or another. But when I was able to kind of balance it, that's when my work performance actually started to improve, because I was able to give more of this to both, as opposed to giving so much of this here and then not having enough here, right? We are human. We only have so much in our tank.
Yeah.
And once we realize that and figure out where to pour the gasoline or the water, whatever is in your tank, into the little tanks that you have that you need to pour into, that's, to me, that's when the performance in both sides really started to thrive. So yeah, but I do understand that sometimes, you know, it doesn't work that way, and it's unfortunate.
Yeah.
You know, but in those situations, I definitely had to figure out how to make it work. You know, whether it was when one thing that I always try to do, and you talk about selfishness, right? When you're talking about going to the beach and stuff like that, I think selfishness is important. I think it is super important to prioritize yourself and give time to yourself, because that's that psychological cleansing that you can do for yourself, so that you're good in all those other areas, whatever it is. You know, my video games. You know, I like playing video games, and that's my like, I'm gonna calm myself down a little bit, you know, for the most part. But video games has a weird way to make you mad too. But you know, I think that as dads, we need to, parents, I don't want to say just dads, parents, like across the board, there is a value in selfishness. It's a productive selfishness. That's actually what I told my applicants when people would say, like, I don't know if I can do this. I have my mom, this and that. And I would tell them, like, right now, man, it's a time for productive selfishness. And this is how you can do that, you know? And I think that there's definitely value in selfishness. Because, again, like I said, it can, once you get your mind right and once you get you right, that's the only way you're going to be good for anybody else.
Yeah. Self-improvement and self-development are necessary tools that have to happen. Those are non-negotiables, you know, so that's non-negotiable no matter what. And that should be, even if you have no kids, that's non-negotiable. Like when I was single and I had 60 soldiers under me, it was, all right, I have to do PT with them. So I don't like doing PT with them. I'm going to go to the gym before, do what I like, and then I'll do PT with the soldiers also. And so it's like, that's my time, and it's almost meditative, right? When you start, you make that selfishness routine for yourself, that is self-improvement. It's just something that's, it's non-negotiable. You have to do it then. It's like every day I need that little break. I wake up every day at 4:30, 5 o'clock, and I take that time before my son wakes up from 5 to 7, and that's my time. That's me going to me meditating, journaling, whatever I'm doing. It's my time, you know. And then a nice little cup of coffee when he's waking up. Yeah. So it's like it's super important to have that, and it's just like we talked in the beginning, is that not only do you have to have this individual improvement, development, you also have to have that with your partner, right? It's like that's a non-negotiable too. So it's like you have these non-negotiables that are like my self-development, my partner and I's development, solo time with your kids' development, and then as a family. It's like a unit. And did you notice, like, when you had kids, how you prioritize work? It's like all of a sudden work's not your priority. It's secondary. The priority of like your kids. So it's like, how do I get back to there? And then just to touch on what you were talking about is like, if you burn yourself out at work, and you come home and you're just, let me open up a bottle of whiskey, sit there and do nothing. Well, your family, even if you crushed work and you're the best at work, and you get home and you do that, you're failing. That's a failure on your family and a failure on the next generation, right? And hopefully those kids will look back and be like, oh, I need to break that pattern that my dad did. Now, that's why it's important to have that family work balance, is because give it all that you have at work, leave work at work. Just like you shouldn't bring your home problems to work, you shouldn't bring your work problems home. And when you get home, you need to switch caps. All right, hey, it's time to be family man. It's time to be dad. It's time to be husband. And it's time to show up is what the fuck it is. It's like, dude, it's time to show up. It's 0900 again, and it's time to start work. And but it's a smaller window, right? Because you might get home at 5 or 6, and your kids may go to bed at 8 or 9. So it's like, you're telling me you can't push through for 2 more hours? 2 more hours? You know what I mean? And we see it all the time, right? You see your own soldiers or airmen, and you watch them like talk about, oh, I'm a father of. It's like a 22-year-old, a father of 2 or 3, and they're just like staying at work the whole time. Like, who's taking care of your kids? Your wife can't do that alone. Get the hell out of here.
Yeah. And I would say, if I were to add anything to that, if you're not able, if those 2 hours, if mentally you're not able to push through, you're not able to do these things that we're talking about, which, I mean, I'll be honest, there was times when I couldn't. I wasn't able to. That's when I felt like I need to seek out help.
Yeah, I agree.
And I needed to get over the manly ego, the masculine, I don't need help. I had to get over that. Like, this is a situation, this is a problem that I am not equipped to handle. I need to seek out help. And I did. I sought it out. I for the past, 4 months, I've had a weekly therapist visit. A meeting. And that's good. It's a good thing. We grow up that seeking help, especially from a manly man platform. We can figure out anything, but we can't figure out anything. And if we don't seek out that help, then we're not only hurting ourselves, but we could be hurting those around us. So that's, if I were to add anything to that, if you're not able to have that work home life balance and be there for the aspect of your family, then that's when I think you'll know that you might need to seek out some help.
And I'm going to hang on to your seeking out help. I was in therapy for 10 years because I'm ADHD, and Army had me on Adderall, which I haven't taken now in like 3 years, but I don't take any pharmaceuticals anymore. I cleaned my entire system out and learned it naturally. But anyways, they had me on Adderall. I had to see a therapist every month. I loved it. I never saw therapists up until 30 years old. And why I beginning step is because the therapist is who gives you the option or teaches you how to speak your emotions, right? And
Mm-hmm.
as men, a lot of times we're not taught that. We're not taught to like actually verbalize what our emotions are.
Yeah.
And it's very hard. It's still very hard for me at 40
Mm-hmm.
years old. And it's like, that's why it's step one. Go see a therapist or hire a mentor or hire a coach. Make sure you do your homework and know what their backgrounds are to help you. But that's step one. Step two is doing the practice yourself, doing that mental strength, right? You have to you strengthen your body. We go lift weights, we go run, do cardio, but are you strengthening your mind? And there's so many tools to that. It's like reading, meditation,
Mm-hmm.
breath work, and it goes on and on. So it's like once you start the therapy, that sometimes opens the doors. It did for me to get into mindful meditation and learn how to regulate my nervous system. So once that happens, then it's like, all right, it opened up another door. Oh, I need to take care of my soul. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, because then you start talking about like you get into all the, what people will call woo woo. Well, I think more people are waking up to it, but it's like, we're all connected, right? Everything's connected. We're connected to nature. We're connected to the universe and the quantum physics and all this stuff, right? That we
Mm-hmm.
know. So it's like, then it makes you say, all right, I need to have my body aligned, my mind aligned, and my soul aligned. And when those three are aligned, then it's like nothing can stop you. You are
Mm-hmm.
unstoppable. It's just like and you feel it, right? And when something goes imbalanced, you know where it's at and how to take care of it. And you don't have to do it yourself. You can go back to the therapist. You can go see your friend or mentor, or you'll have the language to speak with your best friend and sit down and be like, hey, dude, this is how I'm feeling.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just in a rut right now. And to understand that too, that you're just in a rut and things can get better and will get better, right?
Yeah.
And we don't stay down in that position, because that could just cause more harm.
Well, hey, I'll be honest. I'm not there yet. What you're saying, I'm not. And but what you're saying is and the way you're saying it, and I can see the passion. It's motivating me. So thank you, thank you for that.
I'm not there. It's and that's the thing. I think that's the major thing that people think. I'll talk to someone and be like, dude, you have it all figured out. I do, but do I do it all the time? No, I'm a human. So I fall off the train all the time. It's just I do have the tools back to get back on it.
Yeah.
And that's the major thing, is knowing that you learned it. Hey, I did learn this. Oh, wait, stop, Jack. Think it out. I have the tools to help myself this time, right? And it's like, instead of putting myself in a corner or in between a rock and a hard place, I'm now
Exactly.
figuring out a solution. And that's a major thing, right? Because if something bad happens, a lot of times our mind goes to the worst case scenario. But sometimes
Mm-hmm.
you need to stick to that stoic way and allow it to pass through. Try to stay in a joyful mind state, right? Because that's your major things, controlling your mind,
Mm-hmm.
and find a solution forward that makes you better, and that lesson never happens again. Because that's another thing, is like, if you make a mistake or you have a big lesson, well, it's only a lesson if you learn from it and you don't let it happen again, right?
Right.
And that's the hard part, especially in parenting. As a father,
Mm-hmm.
it's like they know how to push our buttons sometimes to the extreme. It's like, here I go, steam's coming out your ears and you're ready
Yep.
to explode. No, he's not going to get this little child's not going to get me. Not
Yeah.
today.
Not today. When you were talking, I kept thinking of a quote that Kobe Bryant said, that he was always chasing perfection, knowing that he wasn't going to get there. But the difference is that he was still willing to chase it, and that's what set him apart. And also what you were saying was, when it come back to the military, all I kept thinking was, remember your training. Remember your training.
Yeah, right. How many times is that remember your training? Remember your training.
Yeah.
And it's like you need to tell yourself that. I mean, you really do. It's like if you're out on the range shooting and you're doing some kind of stress shooting, especially when I was infantry, it's like you just ran 2 miles with a litter and you're coming back and you're burned out because it's like that's the point of it, is stress shooting, right? You burn yourself out,
Mm-hmm.
it'll be all muscle memory. So it's like then you get to the range and you have to say to yourself, like, remember the training. Don't flag anybody. Don't pick it up, because now you have live rounds. You're shooting. Dude, it's scary. Doing those stress shootings are like one of the scariest things, because you're like, this asshole behind me, I know he sucks. I know he sucks at shooting. I'm
Mm-hmm.
lazy and fat, and he's just going to shoot me right in the back for talking shit or something. Yeah.
Oh.
a whole nother level of gut check.
Yep, it definitely is. Well, hey, Jack, I got to get going, man. My kids are waiting on me.
All right. Well, hey, I appreciate your time. And Chaz, we need to do this again. This was absolutely great conversation. I think a lot of people out there are going to be listening in and loving this. And everyone, go follow Dadicated. He's throwing out some great content every day, pretty much. And check out my new book, Fatherhood, The Art of Love and Leadership. And Chaz, have a great day, my man. Enjoy the rest of your
book. It's awesome.
Thanks, brother. Take
care.
Peace. Later, Steve.